Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, and it's 7:07 p.m. Central. And let's see here. Wham's here with us.
Hello.
And was that you, Wham?
That was me. I'm kind of feisty tonight.
Okay. And let's see. And Granddaughter Crow is our guest. She's the author of Belief, Being, and Beyond. Your journey to questioning ideas, deconstructing concepts, and healing from harmful belief systems. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with all of you and individually with each of you.
And I was looking through some of your other books that you wrote before this just to get a feel for everything. And I guess one of my starter questions is, what was kind of the catalyst or the starter point to get you on a road of being more open with your spirituality, or, finding the path that you've taken to write your books and everything?
Oh yeah, that's a beautiful question, and a multifaceted question. So what I will
Yes.
say is that what launched me to write my first book, Journey of the Soul, The Path of a Medicine Person, was actually that I was invited out to a Healing Touch conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I was so honored to be there at their annual pinning ceremony. And for those who don't know what the Healing Touch, it is a widespread thing. You can Google it. But the Healing Touch conference really is about teaching people, mainly in the medical field, but healers that do traditional, well, like, medical or that type of healing modalities, to also learn how to like look at auras and to do Reiki. And they go through like this 4-year pattern. And then the next thing that you know, they get pinned to be a member of the Healing Touch community. It's a beautiful community. I don't know how they found me, but they did. All is divine. And I was looking at their website, and I'm like, who else have they had speaking at their annual ceremony as a keynote? And I noticed that they all had doctorates, which I do have a doctorate in leadership, but the only difference was I didn't have a book. So I'm like, I better write a book. So I wrote a book, and I self-published, and it was a beautiful thing. And then when I was out there, I actually connected with Llewellyn Worldwide, which is now my publisher and all of that. But I can also say that there's another aspect about me that had books within me for a long, long time. But there's another aspect about me that's like, you barely passed high school English. Who do you think that you are that you can write? And even though I was college and my MBA, my doctorate, there was still that little internal narrative that I heard when I was a child that says, who gives you the right to do this? And I had to confront that internal narrative. And so I kind of want to say that because I want to offer to the listeners, check your thoughts. Make sure that they're original, or are you listening to an internal narrative that might hold you back? So that's my road to authorship. I've got another book within me about internal narrative. So we'll see that in a year or so. And so hope that answers your question. It's very multifaceted, but it's a beautiful question. And I think that it kind of helps us all to say, how do you achieve a dream?
Yes, and I've always wondered, or I read somewhere about thoughts, how you could imagine them as birds flying by, and if some of them stop at the tree, so to speak, and take roost, that's the thought manifesting more.
Love it.
So a lot of times I feel really clear headed, and I like make myself think positive affirmations and things, but sometimes you can have negative thoughts that you don't want to have. And I've ran into some personalities lately that seem to trigger those more.
Right.
And the last year or so. And it's scary when you have thoughts that don't feel like they're yours, or like something else is putting them there, that, it's just creepy. Like
Yeah.
I've called it, it's like, are you trying to turn me into Darth Vader? I don't really want to do that.
Oh,
It's
I
a
get it.
battle,
I get
So
it.
what are some ways that, let's say, explain more about the thought process, and maybe how you would go about trying to, turn your thoughts more positive? Is it simple as positive affirmations replacing the negative thought?
Well, if that works for any listener, then I would say yes. But for me, it's a little bit more complex than that because I want to understand where those dark thoughts are coming from so that I can identify and recognize them. I don't like to hide in the light, which sounds really funny. I don't like to hide away from feeling or thinking negatively. I like to, examine all of it. And so this is what I would. This is this is a fun conversation. Um, the way, and I'm going to go deep. You trust me, I just can't help it. I just go deep real quick. So check this out.
That's great.
When the way the language that we speak constitutes it expresses the way that we see the world, our thought process. So what I mean is an English speaker will think in English. Moreover, I am of the Navajo Nation and Dutch heritage, so I have this, you know, by pattern of cognitive thinking. In the Navajo language, I think Navajo too. So there is a discrepancy between the word psyche. Trust me, I'm taking us somewhere. In the English speaking, English thinking language, we say psyche is an individualistic point of view. Like I have an individual psyche, so do you, so do you. But in the Navajo way of thinking, they feel I from what I understand, and I think it also goes back to the Hebrew language, this idea that the psyche is not individualized and separate, but the psyche is actually this collective thing flowing through us. And depending on what channel we're tuned into, we pick up on different things with each other. So it's more of a collective thing. And so, with that, I would say, just kind of like, I guess, a visualization would be like we are fish swimming in a collective psyche. And so, in that, it makes me wonder when I have different thoughts, I question what psyche am I in? What is going on with the collective psyche? And what radio station or frequency I'm turned into? Now, you tell me, Jeffro, if that's too deep or what?
That's great. I love it. And I understand, and I enjoyed your book a lot. I'm originally from Georgia, and my dad, we had a Christian upbringing, but he kind of considered himself as a backslider, and he used to be a preacher and things like that. So I've been around that all my life. And though I think there's truth to Christ, that I've explored other belief systems from shamanic things to Norse to Druidism, and I find comfort in those things, studying other belief systems. But I've had experiences where, let's say, well, just briefly to tell my story briefly, so you know why the show's here. When I was 17, I had testicular cancer and had to go through chemo, and I'm fine now. I'm 47 and I'm healed. Besides being tired and beat up, and a year or so later, when I was 17, my dad died. And I started to have a lot of spiritual experiences and paranormal experiences, from seeing strange things in the sky with multiple witnesses to beings of light leaving my house, just different things like that. And it led to me getting intermingled with doing the show to kind of make sense of it and not go completely nuts. but
Mhm.
uh, but I mean, there were things at different houses that seemed like they were parked over my home, and I don't know if I've been abducted or what, but I've seen some weird beings. If I was abducted, I don't remember anything, but some of my first experiences seeing some of these beings, my first thought was devil, fallen angel. Oh my God, I'm going straight to hell, because
Mhm.
I seen some that were kind of serpentine reptilian, and it scared the crap out of me. But yet they were conveying a positive message, like sing, dance, create, like Deepak Chopra. So it was very confusing. So it was very confusing. But the beings of light, I've seen those many times. But I know, like when you see something like that, and then that, oh my God, you're going to hell. That's the devil. Like that's
Mhm.
that upbringing. And I
Mhm.
know there's a lot of abuse in Christianity and craziness that's insane that I don't understand at all with certain things. But seeing those beings of light, I'm like, well, maybe they do have a Jesus boss, that glows too, that gives them the glow. So it's just kind of like breaking it down. But that's what I've been trying to understand it in that kind of context. When it comes to harmful belief systems, though, uh, what about Christianity? Is that included one that you discuss? And I know there's different. It's a complex subject. There's different topics with it. Different subject matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the book Belief, Being, and Beyond, like, questioning your thought process and deconstructing concepts and healing from harmful belief systems. I do absolutely do comparative religion within this, including Christianity, some Navajo stories, and then maybe Norse or Hindi. And, because I love studying comparative religion. I, like you, was raised by a reverend of the Christian faith. My story, as I think that most people's stories, when we are at the level of talking about spirituality and all of that, we and self-healing and questioning, they get very complex. But what I would say is the definition of a harmful belief system is a system that does not allow you to ask questions, a system that tells you who and what you are supposed to be, a system that you're not allowed to have a dialogue with. You have to accept what they say, or you are going to hell with Satan. And, I definitely understand the internal narrative of a lot of people who have been raised in a lot of different belief systems, even Christianity, Catholicism, etc., would say the narrative that I have for anything that is outside of the scope that I have learned through my teachings in the church equals the devil. And so, what I invite people to do is to open your mind. And the harmfulness about any belief system, any dogma, is when they say, close your mind, believe what I say. If you don't, you're damned. Yeah, and the thing is that that goes beyond, any dogma as far as like Christianity and Catholicism, because there's a lot of beauty in those too. There's pearls of wisdom. But at the end of the day, like I've looked and I haven't experienced, but I have watched Scientology things, cult things, and all of these are like, don't question the leader. And I'm like, what happens when you're not allowed to question the leader? What happens? And then I'm like, mind control, closed mindedness, harmful belief system.
Definitely. And it's just, I know you talk about different things from the Christian belief system with the Navajo belief system. Are there things that are similar in the creation story that you see? What are some similarities?
Absolutely. So, to kind of explore the book a little bit more for the reader that will be reading it in the future, or listening to the show, I I see macro versus micro expressions of certain concepts. So, the concept of being in a human form and asking the question of, where did I come from? That is a very organic question that the human species asks. We are curious. And so then stories, religions, philosophy, mythology, legends, lore, fairy tales try to answer these questions for us. And depending on where you land on the face of this earth, these stories may change a little bit. But at the end of the day, if you go to that macro level of, this is trying to explain to this human person where they came from, then you find the correlation between Christianity, you find the correlation between the Navajo creation story, you find the correlation, within many creation stories. There are many creation stories, but really it's trying to help us to answer that question. Where did I come from? And it's trying to give us comfort. Like all of them say, you came from creator. Christianity will say God made. And I could go off and say Adam and Eve, and Adam as in a cell, and Eve as evolution. We can go many ways here. And then you can go into like the Navajo creation story, where we're working our way up, first man and first woman, from world to world to world, or consciousness to consciousness to consciousness. But they're all talking about a very basic thing: our birth and our childhood, and also correlating to a very micro level, our morning and how we wake up. What brought me here today? So it's such an explosive question from a macro to a micro, but it's answering the question, where did I come from? How did I get here? So within Christianity and a lot of other even major world religions, even scientific beliefs, whether it's about evolution, they're trying to help the human experience understand, where did I come from? And so that's where I'm like, take the liberty and explore all of them, find the similarities, and then find what works for you. And there's little pieces along my journey that, oh, that made sense. And then there's other pieces that like, that didn't make sense, but this makes sense. So it's all about being curious. And I want to say that I talk a lot about being curious. And sometimes I'm hit by a person in the audience. It's like, yeah, but Granddaughter Crow, curiosity killed the cat. And then I say, oh, do you know the whole statement? Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. That is the complete thing. So it's like, if you are subscribed to an ideology of stop thinking, when you get curious, it'll kill you. If you don't question, it'll kill you. And I'm like, oh no, whatever you believe the creator to do, whether it's a Christianized creator, a Catholicism, a scientific creator, the Navajo creation story, or whatever, all of those, they're just telling you, giving you you were here on purpose. And be curious, because you matter. And we made you, whatever this is that made us with a curious spirit.
Jeffrey, you're muted. You're muted.
A dog was barking, so I turned it down. And if for some reason a pig goes off, or a kitten, just a warning. Hopefully the pig does not. It's been usually good during the show.
Love it.
It's been crazy.
Love it.
Well, with Christianity, the idea of Jesus and what he represents, I enjoy that. But sometimes when I look at Christianity and the way things have been with politics and stuff and all that stuff in America, and just it seems like a death cult sometimes. Like, the guy's coming back, we're all going to die. Like it's kind of, there's a lot of crazy things to it. So you got to try to stick to the Jesus pro pluses with that. And then when you look at the past, witches, natives, the Crusades, all the craziness, it's just a lot, and sometimes it can just make your brain explode. So, but one thing I enjoy with different, with the native belief systems and Norse and the different ones, are everyone seems to have a pantheon of creatures, little people, winged creatures, the S walkers. I don't want to say that one out loud.
I know what you're
careful.
talking about,
And
that especially to a Navajo. Yep.
Yeah, I've just finished up a good TV show on AMC, Dark Winds, that was really good, with a lot of Navajo in it, a lot of native actors. It's based on a Tony Hillerman book, but they just did 6 episodes and had some of the people from that other show, Res Dogs, in it. That's on Hulu, but it was really good. I think there was an S. Walker kind of witch situation in it, but I don't know much about Tony Hillerman. I'm guessing he was native. I have to look that up. I'd hope so because he sure does write a lot of native books, but I'd have to look up his background. I know I have a bunch from eBay, but it was really good, and it got into a lot of the, you know, it was really good for a show, and I'm glad that there's been native shows doing really good. That Res Dogs did pretty good because it's by the guy that did What We Do in the Shadows, the funny vampire show. And then Dark Winds is actually by well, Tony Hillerman, but Robert Redford and George R.R. Martin, the Game of Thrones dude, put the show together. So it's really good. But
Nice.
Robert Redford is heavily involved in creating it. So that's a good one. But well, and then when it comes to like the little people and things like that, these belief systems all share these beings in different ways, you know, and it's just fascinating. So as I try to look at it from that point of view, and I know Paul Wallace, who we've interviewed. I saw some title to a video that he put out. He writes like books about aliens and stuff. He said every creation story is like a genetic experiment from aliens or so the creator or whatever. But
Yep.
the way he looked at it was like every Garden of Eden scenario was some kind of, you know, creator weird alien situation where
Sure.
they, you know, made us.
Sure.
So there's just so many connections, and then I know with, you know, the extremism in Christianity. Like right now, I live with my fiance Christina. We haven't had a chance to get married because of COVID, and
Mm.
she doesn't want to go to a courthouse. I don't blame her, but to get married around here, pretty much you have to infiltrate a church and pretend you love Trump to get in and get married properly. So it's like hard.
Yeah.
So her whole family, we're sinners, and you know
Yeah.
and I know they've done terrible stuff that I could get into, but I'm not on air. So they're sitting back, sinner, sinner, sinner. So I know this craziness.
Sure.
I've seen it
Sure.
all my life in so many
Sure.
different ways. But so when you've dealt with some of these harmful belief systems, I know you get into deconstructing concepts and, you know, questioning the ideas of it. I mean, what's the path to healing with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're throwing down about the different major religions and or pantheons and mysticism and how they have big beings and giants and little people and all of that. And I'm just like, but doesn't that make sense? I mean, what was our fairy tales all created about, you know? You know, you've got the dwarves and Snow White and you know, not to get lost in the idea um of this needs to make sense to my logical brain, but moreover to open up the childhood creative force. And then you can listen to these types of stories and allow it to speak to you and your spirit. Because I was raised by my mother and father, met in seminary school under the Christian faith, non denominational, oh, actually Christian reform. So, very, very, I mean, that was the thing, and I could go into more about that, but it's kind of like, so, but I still, as I was as a child, I still like played with the little people in the cupboard. Like it was just normal to me. And I think that that's the fun part about the exploration is to play with it. So there's many roads to deconstructing harmful belief systems, but I would have to say if you were to go way, way, way up in the sky and see the macro part of it and not down into the micro, but what about this and what about that, you would understand that you're allowed to be authentic and you're allowed to experience what you experience. We are experiencing a phenomenon, but it is only the human organism that judges it to be good or evil, right or wrong, bad or good. My cat has no problem with murdering, you know, a mouse, and I don't judge her for that. and her system of belief doesn't judge her. So when I say harmful belief system, again, I'm talking about a belief system that does not allow you to ask questions, be curious, because when we can come together as the human race with all of our questions, be it childlike or scholarly, but every voice is heard, we may find ourselves in a higher understanding of what is possible and what we do. I've studied a lot of different belief systems, but in that, I am not going to say that I'm an expert. You know, I honor everybody's authenticity. I'm not telling you that you have to believe one way or another, but I am saying that if you find yourself in a position where there is some sort of ideology or dogma that says, don't question me, trust me, believe me blindly, this is good, this is bad, red flag for me. Red flag for me.
So what are some of the Navajo end of times situations? I've heard of different ones. I know Al going back brought up the third shaking, which I'm not sure exactly which one that's from, maybe Hopi or something. But what are some of the end of time scenarios? Because from a lot of Christians right now think it's the end of the world, and if you look around, it looks like it could be on the brink of it. Just looking with all the crazy Putin wanting to bomb Ireland and us every day and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right.
But what are some of the end of times that the Navajo mention?
So, just to be clear, although I do have my certificate of Indian blood, and I am of the Navajo Nation, I do not speak on their behalf. However, I will tell you what I have learned from that, and it basically is this idea that much like the day, you live your day, you wake up in the morning, at noontime you enlighten, you're a teenager, in the evening time you're an adult and you're just being, and in the nighttime you're waiting to become. And so what does the end of times look like? Nighttime, when you fall asleep and you're regenerating yourself, and then you become anew. That's kind of how I throw it down in the book. But there is also these teachings that we live in a world, a dimension at this time that has a lot of holy significance around the number four, meaning four directions, north, south, east, and west. Four bodies of existence: physical, emotional, spiritual, mental. Um, there's a lot of fours that we live in. Like categorizing things in fours, and I'm sure that your audience might be like, oh, what about this, Granddaughter Crow, what about that? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Four, 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 everything is four. And there is this idea that we are getting surrounded. Four seasons, there we go, I got at least one more, spring, summer, autumn, fall, autumn, and then winter. Four, we're living in this four in order for us to understand the vibration of four, so that we can feel comfortable moving into the fourth dimension and feel comfortable in that. And then in the fourth dimension, we will be surrounded with the number five. Now, the funny thing about that is, I don't, I actually wonder, I'd love to pose this question to you. Like, sometimes we talk about different dimensions, and here we are in the end of time, and it's just like, holy, I was in a position that believed so much in the rapture, in all of that, that I actually, as a child, used that as an excuse for not doing my homework, because I'm like, well, what if Jesus comes tomorrow? Why would I waste my time on math? I get really like that. But at the end of the day, do we, as a human race, all evolve together, or do some of us go into different dimensions and lead the way? What do you guys think about that? Because
Well,
I think that it's like we kind of need some forerunners until we get everything, and then we finally get there.
I mean, I think it's certainly possible. I mean, I've heard the term way shower or a way shower, or teachers that do that. Like a spiritual teacher. Uh, I don't try to get too kooky with it with all the certain numbers going. I mean, there may be some truth to that, but I don't really know. I see 444 a lot. I used to call it the devil's pitchfork, but just I was just being kind of morbid because I like horror movies. But then I saw it meant angels, so I try to associate it with that now when I see it. I was like, devil's pitchfork. Oh God, but 444. So now I kind of take it as angels are with you. And but I mean, I'm not against the idea that some people, might achieve a level of consciousness that helps move others forward, like kind of like Christ consciousness or whatever, ascension. I've read a lot of stuff about that from light worker point of views. I've done, exercises. There's some Tony Stubbs light worker books that I use to this day with all this, light worker affirmations and call the rays in to help you. And I do feel different when I do it, but sometimes it's kind of silly, but there is some good stuff in that, and there's truths in everything. And then my big thing is seeing these beings of light. I've seen them completely sober. And like I've said, I've seen them partying a few times with friends, but I've seen them completely sober. One time I was in my home and I had put on the Bible on DVD, like it was a waterfall and all this stuff, some DVD set. Something told me to go out and look in the sky. And I was like, okay, I guess I will. And I went out, turned towards my house, saw two glowing people of light as if they had been in my home, and they came out the roof and flew into the heavens. And I was completely sober, not even tobacco, you know, nothing. And I'll never forget it. And I mean, I've talked to different people about it, so I'm blue in the face trying to figure out if it was loved ones, aliens, angels. I've had Don Oscar in South America, down south, say they have like parties and watch the shining ones in the sky, and he has some on video, which I need to see the video. I haven't seen those yet, but he's pretty reputable. And they might be tripping, they may not be. I don't know, but I've got a lot of info from it. So I mean, who's to say those aren't teachers or ascendant masters or beings that are helping us? On some level, they've obviously achieved some kind of higher consciousness. We could be those beings anchored in these meat puppets, for
Right,
a little
right.
bit of everything. But yeah, I think there's some truth to it, but you just have to be careful and not go culty with "I'm the chosen one." you know?
True. Absolutely.
That's when it gets sour. But yeah, there's some truth to that. I think I've heard it called a way shower or something like that.
Yeah. I when I'm watching you or listening to you about these experiences, what I think to myself is, what did you feel in that moment? Like, did you feel awe? Did you feel curious? Did it help you to expand your mind, and that type of thing? Because at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of stuff that I can't explain either, but I also realize that it's almost like showing me that there is something more. And that's what I love about, investigation into different belief systems, is that no matter how much you learn, there is always more. And I love that. And I also would say that somebody who thinks that and I talk about this in the book, somebody who thinks that they don't have blind spots is the one that I'm like, uh-oh, because everybody
Yes.
has blind spots. I have blind spots, and blind spots aren't these like holes in your thinking that you identify with. We fill in those blind spots really, really quickly. There's like, just to express it to your audience a little bit more. When my husband, who used to ride a motorcycle, when he went to motorcycle class or whatever, they taught him, most people in cars will look for other cars. They don't look for motorcycles. And then there was this big thing. I don't know. It was here, in Colorado. I think it was a countrywide thing, but there were like these signs that said, please watch for motorcycles. Please watch for motorcycles. The idea and the scientific idea around it is if you look over your shoulder and look to see if there's a car and there's not a car, you will change lanes. But if you look over your shoulder to see a car and or motorcycle, then the motorcycle enters your blind spot. So you're not just looking for one thing, you're looking for whatever is there. And so I absolutely, for me, in writing this book, I am definitely not a person who's like, this is the way to go, except this. If you're curious, be curious. If you have a question, ask the question, because whatever it is that causes people not to ask question is what I see as harmful. Children need to grow. I'm a child. Some people refer to me as a teacher, an author, because I've written books and I teach classes. But in truth, what I feel like is I'm like this curious, like little girl who just wants to know more and more and more. And then I'm like, oh my God, you guys, I've got to share this with you. I've got to share this with you. What do you think? What do you think about this? Did I stir up something in you that will cause you to pose another question to me so I can create and live and engage? Is kind of how I see it.
Wham, do you think they're way showers or
Way showers.
showers? Is that what it is? Showers?
Maybe. I mean, I have a different. I don't tend to think that the whole planet is necessarily all going in the same direction. To me, the planet is not a specific location. So and there's more than one planet here. There's the planet that we are all focused in here at this moment, and then there are all the probable and possible planets that occupy the same space, and all the futures and pasts that those would be. So to me, it's like if a particular belief system tickles your fancy, or helps you to deal, it gets you in that questioning mode or whatever, it speaks your story essentially. I mean, to me, there are actually two stories that are told by all religions and faiths. There's the story of where we came from, but then there's also the story of how transformation occurs. Like the story of the prophet, or the story of the shaman, or the story of the holy person, or whatever. And both of those are reflections of, one kind of sets you in place. I mean, a lot of the individual creation stories are actually talking about where specific peoples come from. Why is it that we have the identity that we have? Whether you're, Dene, or whether you're Hopi, or whether you're, Jewish or whatever. And then the other story is about, how certain people transform their lives, or how certain forces help them to transform their lives. And they can both be useful for people, even though, your individual experience of transformation is going to be very different than some. I personally am not a big fan of Jesus's transformation. I'm not a martyr. I'm not interested in that. And that that is going to speak, and it's going to speak or not speak to different people at different times. There's this, I always told the story to when I taught comparative religion at the college level. There's all this story about Jesus and all the trials he went through and the torture he went through, which, if that's a real story, that's real. Certainly people went through that. But then I would also tell them other stories that kind of come from the same 200-year period. The story of the prophet Mani, who almost nobody knows that story. And this was a real guy who created a real religion, that had profound historical impact on the development of institutional Christianity and Catholicism. Hardly anybody knows his story. He went eventually to the Persian Empire to preach his religion, and the power changed hands, and he was subjected to the favorite mode of Persian torture and death, which was to be fastened to the ground and force fed food, and left out to basically exposed to the elements until you die. It took him 30 days to die.
Wow.
And that really happened, as far as we know. We even know the high priest who sentenced him to death. We know that. I mean, there are inscriptions of this guy where he talked about it, and he was a religious fanatic. And then I would tell them the story of how one of the great Jewish scholars of the Talmud, because he refused to obey the Roman edict not to preach the Torah, was taken into a Colosseum, wrapped in a Torah and set on fire. And so I would say, so who of these people died more horribly? I mean, would you exchange yourself for any of that? You know what I mean? So there are certain transformation stories I'm not a big fan of, and to me they are indicative of what we should not be doing with each other. But in the end, whatever gets you to that place where you can heal, where your story is told and you can heal, that to me is the heart that you need to follow, because there are endless possibilities for stuff, and we're going off and on and off planet all the time. I mean, my body's from here. Some of my ancestors are from here, but there are whole chunks of who I am that are not from here at all. And in fact, I'm leaving here. It's like, according to my astrologer, my chart says, this is your last time here because you're sick of the muggles. You're out of here. That's exactly how I feel about it. I don't think I'm a way shower, whatever that means. If some people like what I say or want me to tell them some stuff, I will. But I'm not. Enlightenment's all around us. Grab some.
I love it.
It's not a scarce commodity. It's not like there's a currency that's going to keep it from you. So I don't know. Are there way showers? If someone has showed you the way, Jeffrey, then they're a way shower.
There's Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
And I remember from Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, who I've interviewed, God says all my messengers have been defiled. It does seem like there's something here that's an a-hole, no matter which way you look at it. So it's definitely
one of the humans that's an a-hole.
Yeah, I don't know
if all of us, but
a Sith Lord or the devil or whatever. It might just be the stupidity of man. But I don't. There's something rotten in Denmark, and lately my sleep's been mutilated. I've had blood pressure stuff, so it just makes you feel crazy. Try not to do blood pressure medication because that just makes you crazier and worse. So trying to exercise and eat better, but my sleep getting messed with, buddy. I can't. It's rough. So I've been trying to iron that out. I'm usually someone that sleeps pretty good, but lately I don't know what it is, just the stuff in the world or what. But
yeah, I've had this last week. I've had 2 nightmares, and I haven't had nightmares for years. I mean, and it's like when I think about like what the dreams were about, I'm like, oh, that's only a nightmare to me. That's not like an objective nightmare, But I mean, like one of them was so intense, I had to actually get up and walk around the house and turn all the lights on, not because I was scared, but it was just to, make sure I was in this world here. It was so weird. And so I just figure, well, there's plenty of stuff to have nightmares about. So.
Definitely. And I know with the creation stories and the similarities, was there, I know I've heard about the flood being in like different Gilgamesh and weird stuff like that. But is there a flood situation in Navajo stuff? What are some of the flood references that are
A-
similar?
Absolutely. There, in the Navajo story, there is a flood reference, and there is a monster that lives under the water monster, and how it floods the world, and how you have to go again up through another portal. And just to give a side note, it has been less than 200 years that the Navajo language has been written. So we are a very oral culture, and in the nature of an oral culture, things change from different, you know, clans to different clans, and they all have like similar meanings. But there are, so when you talk to one Navajo, you will hear one way, and when you talk to
Mhm.
another Navajo, they'll say it in a different way. It's because these stories have been passed on from generation to generation through an oral teaching. And just now, we're not necessarily that I'm aware of writing them down in the Navajo language. We're actually explaining them to the English thinker and the English speaker online. So you can Google a lot of these things, but you'll find variances. But at the end of the day, yes, there are flood stories within the Navajo Nation. And um, it's kind of interesting because Christians have a flood story, you know, with Noah and the ark. The Navajos have a flood story. Um, other major religions have flood stories. I'm kind of forgetting. I have it in the book, but also science has flood stories. And so obviously floods happened. How we interpret the phenomenon of a flood depends on our worldview. In the Christianized thinking, as far as I learned, it was because the world was rendered with evil and God needed to wash away all the sins. But yet, in another way, it's actually a sanctification time of healing energy. And so it's like when you hear the word flood story, how does your mind interpret that? And then research so that your mind can get broader so that it's not stuck in just one way of thinking. That's kind of what I'm encouraging is look at it from all aspects. We live, you know, what I like to say is we walk around experience phenomenon, whether it's a day, an event, a huge event that lasts for 4 years or whatever, you know, we're experiencing a phenomenon, but it is our minds that create the meaning behind this phenomenon. It is our thinking and our training that says this is right or wrong. And then, moreover than that, when we start going, wait, I need to look outside of that and understand that there are a lot of ways to think about this. There are a lot of ways to go. That's where my stars align. I'm all about mental expansion and accepting people for their authenticity, saying that the divine reveals itself to all of us in the way that we can understand it. And so there was a time when I needed a shepherd and Jesus showed up. There was a time when I felt like a victim, a female victim, and Lilith showed up. There was a time, you know, so there's so many different archetypes. If you kind of reflect on like Carl Jung and look at the archetypes, you can kind of see that there are heroes, there are saviors, there are, you know, warriors, there are, you know, creation things, and all of these stories and things that we get to engage helps us to put meaning around the phenomenon that we're experiencing, to explain it to ourselves. And so I'm never going to tell somebody what you are thinking is right or wrong. I am going to ask them, have you questioned and investigated that? And if you're comfortable and it resonates with you, good for you. Because there was a time that resonated for me, that maybe there's a time that it will resonate for me in the future. But if it makes sense to you, good, because this multiverse that we're in is like going to meet us individually. I love what Wham said about, you know, there's so many different paths and we're not all going in the same direction. I loved that. And it's like, but Be you, and don't let people tell you that you're not allowed to question or be curious. If Satan and the devil and all these things happen to you, and you understand it as Satan and the devil, so be it. Then it's Satan and the devil. But maybe, you experience what seems like an alien being. And then you're like, well, is that alien? Does that mean little green men? Or does that mean beings of light? Be where you're at, because whatever it is that is showing us this consciousness, maybe even ourself showing ourself this consciousness, which is a whole nother broadcast, but let it explain itself to you and unfold. I used to roll around with this group, the Star Knowledge Conference, and there is a lot of Native American lore and wisdom that we or the holy people come from the stars. And then, actually, if you look at it scientifically, yeah, we are made of stardust. So whatever meaning we're putting around the phenomenon that we're experiencing, let it make sense to you for today, and tomorrow it might change.
Definitely. And I've had some experiences where me and Christina have discussed Lilith, and I said her name late at night, and I heard an owl right after that kind of spooked me out really
Of
quick.
course. I love
And I mean, it was a loud, weird owl that she remembers what kind it was, but it was definitely creepy. But I mean, what can you tell us about some more of that experience? It's just a unique subject that I've heard things about, and if you just look at some of the basics, it's pretty much supposedly she didn't lay with Adam missionary style or whatever, and got punished, and who knows how much of that's crap. But and then went and sporked Satan and had his spawn babies, which is kind of the cliche story, I'm sure, but I think that's kind of what they say, isn't it? I mean, what's your experience of her?
right with Lilith.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, my experience with Lilith is she is the archetypical vibration that needs to come to the subservient feminine to help her to understand that we are equal. So I understand all of the tales. I also understand that some of the paintings about Lilith is that she is this woman described that she wanted to be on top, and Adam said, no, you need to be subservient in a very, methodological way and also physical way. But she was like, I'm not going to be subservient to masculine. I am feminine and I am equal. And so, depending on how that vibe goes throughout different belief systems, she could be demonized or she could be a hero.
It's definitely fascinating. And I know I've come across that Star Knowledge Conference. I've never been to it, but I've heard of it. Chief Golden Light Eagle. I know I have
Absolutely.
one of his books that's pretty fascinating. 1111, I think it's called. I
Yep.
know he passed not so long ago.
Yep.
Uh, but that book, I was trying to write them too, see if they were going to republish any of the books. They said maybe in the future, but I have that book. Are you familiar with that book? It's kind of a strange
Absolutely.
book.
Absolutely. I actually have a signed copy, and I have had Chief Golden Light Eagle over to my home for a blessed dinner. And I've spoke at many of his conferences. I haven't read it in depth, but I have heard, and he really opens up this huge, beautiful concept. If any of the listeners want to learn about what the Lakota has to do with stars and extraterrestrials, and he talks about meeting with the government, and he talks about a lot of things. There's a lot of people who, if you look at past star knowledge conferences, that have ranches that are dedicated to raising the vibration, and aliens actually come by. I know a lot of people who follow that. I When I spoke at the Star Knowledge Conference a handful of years in a row, I really kind of talked about grounding the people and making sure that, they stay in their consciousness as they discover all of this beauty. So, but yeah, cheers to, Chief Golden Light Eagle, um, beautiful soul. And, I think that there might be a reason why they might not republish is because I remember him saying he was instructed that not one word from that book should be changed. And I know that if you get it to a major publisher, their editor is going to want to massage the words. So.
Yes, and I wish I got the other ones. I know that's one. There were several, weren't there? Like different ones. I know I got 1111. I didn't get any of the other ones, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know that my mind says he wrote 2 or I have 2 books from him, but yeah, it's all about symbology and beings from otherworldly beings. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those you just kind of like. I kind of flip to the different like medicine shields, when you're in when the mood hits you, like one of those,
Yeah.
quote books.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, but it's really good. I know Clifford Mahooty Zuni, he passed not too long ago. I know him. And are you familiar at all with Artie Six Killer Clark? ARDY Six Killer Clark. She's been on the show. She has UFO books with Native American
Oh.
star people encounters and things like
Oh,
that.
beautiful. I know Clifford, the Zuni person. I've met him. Um, but I'm not familiar with her. That sounds very fascinating. And I know here's an interesting thing. If you see the Navajo reservation is kind of the four corners of the United States, which means that it's like Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. And I was born on the res on the New Mexico side. And if you ever go out there beyond the city of Farmington onto the actual Navajo reservation at night, you will see so many stars that it will blow your mind because it's not getting that reflection from the city lights. So, and you think about all of the stories and all of the beings, I absolutely do not believe that we are alone without other consciousness in this what I experience as a multi-dimensional multiverse.
And Nancy Red Star interviewed her a million years ago when I first started out. One of the big things that I've realized about all this that we're talking about and the show and all the different guests is raising consciousness. And I actually had an experience where I had a verification that that's what this is about and why we go through some of
Mhm.
this stuff. I was having trouble getting interviews at one point when I first started out, and I said a prayer, and I had a weird UFO sighting in the sky of what I
Mhm.
call red fireflies. It was like this weird red energy. I don't know what it was, but I screamed outside, and my brother and nephew saw them, and it was weird. And then next thing you know, I'm having conversations with like people from UFO documentaries. Lloyd Pye, the Star Child skull, he's passed. Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, Nick Pope, like all these people, it's like it helped me on some level. Like it
Yeah,
was, so it made me realize how connected it is, and it's about raising consciousness, and that's why I think we're here. That's still exploring that and trying to understand it, but that's definitely a big part of it for sure.
I love it. I love it. And moreover, it can be as intricate and complex and or simple as we want it to be. So when we're talking about things like this, just to kind of reground the audience, what we're talking about is energy. That's all. Energy. And energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and it continuously transforms. And so, simplistically, whether they be earthly energy, star energy, future energy, past energy, heaven energy, hell energy, however you understand this phenomenon, that's what we're talking about. Is we're talking about energy. And when we start connecting with energy outside of the earth, that's when we start trying to understand in more and more in depth. And I am one who will listen to everybody's experience because your experience is exactly true. How you understand your experience is something that I say keep questioning it and keep being curious until you do, until you feel that satisfaction. I have experienced multiple things, and to the point where I'm just like, okay, well, I'll put my helmet on next time that I take a ride around the universe because sometimes I bump my head and I don't know where I'm at. But it is so much fun because when we look at our experience as something that is profound, unique, acknowledged by at least me, Granddaughter Crow. I acknowledge your experience, even if you have a, in the closet experience that you don't have anybody to talk about. There are people who will listen to you and accept what you are experiencing because it's all energy. And who am I to say what your experience is supposed to be about, you know?
Yes, and I know you have a tarot throughout your book, which is fascinating. I collect tarot decks and have a lot of them myself and love them. And it's cool how you've intermingled it into your book. And one of the things I know that you got into that I find fascinating is I'm a Capricorn, and I see sometimes people try to scapegoat us as the devil card all the time in a negative situation. And I know you get into that and get it more into a positive situation with that. But I've seen that come up in readings a lot. Like Capricorn's the devil card. And that may be so, but that doesn't mean all Capricorns are the devil. Maybe sometimes. but but
We
what
can all be the devil at some times,
yeah.
honey. Yeah,
Yeah. So what are some of your thoughts on that, on Capricorns and that card and Saturn and
absolutely.
things?
Absolutely. So when I look at the devil, I don't take the traditional stance of something that is evil. I take it as a stance of something that questions the understood normality of societal norms. I also see that it is something that will go ahead and work with societal norms and say, for me, the devil card is more of like what you end out trying to control ends out controlling you. So be very, very careful about things that you try to control, such as if you want to make $1 million, that's great. And so you go to work, that's great. But then you realize that you're going to work to make $1 million, but you don't have time to spend that $1 million. Now we're starting to see the devil card where you're locked into something and you need to step outside of whatever that hamster wheel. And so when I look at Saturn and I look at the devil card and I look at Capricorn, I see they are the ones who kind of go, let's look at the system. Let's figure out the system and then let's see if it's controlling us or not. When I look at Saturn, I see old father time, that Saturn energy has those rings around it, which is kind of like trying to keep you down. And so it's kind of like, sometimes when I see the devil, I'm not talking about Satan either. I'm talking about the devil card, which I differentiate. Because I think that Satan is more of an archetype of the rebel that a rebel. But when I'm talking about the devil card, it's like, what are you trying to control, and is it controlling you, and what goes beyond that, and trying to figure out when you go into those times, it's not necessarily evil. It's actually an enlightened time to go, oh my gosh, I actually am being controlled by the dollar instead of letting it free flow, and then you can move out of that.
The chains of Saturn. Saturn, I mean, there's definitely some interesting Capricorns. Anthony Hopkins, David Bowie, Rob Zombie. It's definitely a weird sign. And I know Elvis,
Elvis.
that's right. Nick Cage, too.
Hmm.
You got Elvis. That's good. You can't go wrong with
Can't go
Elvis.
wrong with Elvis. Hmm.
What's Wham's card? A sun, isn't
Jimmy
it?
Buffett.
Jimmy
Jimmy
Buffett's a
Buffett.
Capricorn.
Yes, he
I think
is.
Brad Pitt's a Capricorn.
Yeah.
Can't go
No,
wrong with
no,
Brad
Brad
Pitt.
Pitt's a Sag.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different ones. Marilyn Manson, we don't want him anymore. He went cuckoo. I used to listen to his music and go to concerts, but lately with all the weird, crazy sex stuff that he's accused of,
Well,
it's like
you know.
hard to listen to. But
Mhm.
Wham's the Sunshine card. All
You
right,
Leo?
yeah, Leo.
Are
Yeah,
you Leo?
yeah, but I have a Capricorn ascendant and Saturn and Capricorn in the first house and Taurus moon and Mars in Virgo, and we are not amused by Leo. And Leo's in the eighth house, so at least it has that nice scorpionic dampening effect. I'm not a big fan of being a Leo, although I will say that probably given the rest of my chart, if I wasn't one, I would have killed myself or someone else by now. So
Sure.
it's probably a better thing, as I've gotten become an old person. I've sort of made my peace with it, but there's so many Leos that I just want to shoot out of the sky. So I I try to think of the ones that I like, like Kate Bush and Gillian Anderson and Dua Lipa, who rocks. And
Nice.
so I try to think of the ones that I can admire because they've transcended that
Yeah.
the barfy part of what pisses me off about Leo. You know, it's just, I mean, there are just so many Leos that just make me want to go, shut up. And I'm probably being a Leo by doing that. I don't,
I love it.
which is even worse. It's like, ugh, I can't. I'm surrounded by myself.
I'm surrounded by myself. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, that being said, irregardless of, and I study astrology. I talk a little bit about astrology within the book as identified even with the tarot cards. And I really have this concept that I subscribe to that in my observation, I find you can be an immature astrological sign or you can be a mature astrological sign. And so, some tendencies of every sign, manipulation or control or, whatever. But then we can all ascend. And so, whatever sign you be out there, I love you. And if you, want to learn more about how that aligns with it, I mean, belief, being, and beyond goes into, kind of mentioning the astrological. I happen to be, I'd be remiss if I didn't share me.
I was wondering.
Yeah. Sun sign is Cancer. I actually am a very proud Leo, 10th house. I have my sun sign is in the 9th house, which means constant mental expansion. Scorpio rising. So some people, you look at me, you go, I love her. I hate her. She looks intense. But at the end of the day, in my career, I go big or go home. And then when I actually go home, I hide under the covers because I've been so sensitive and all my feelings got hurt by little people.
Well, that's the whole Cancer thing. It's
That's
like
the Cancer thing.
you're just waiting for someone to hurt you. Who's going to hurt me today? Who's going to hurt me today? I mean, it's like I have cancers like coming out of my face. I mean, everyone I know, my mother. Well, I've got my Mercury's in Cancer, so
Oh, me too.
I get cancer, but oh my God, I have so many cancers in my life. But
Yeah.
seriously, they're all about you gonna hurt me?
I have a Scorpio friend who, when I call her up, she goes, okay, did you go out of your shell and get your feelings hurt again?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yes, I did.
Like, oh, I'm sorry.
But it's all good because it's all, like experience. And that's kind of what I love to define things and keep it that way, but I also like to keep things fluid and look for, the beauty around everyone. And I love Scorpios. I love all of the signs. I love people's uniqueness, and that's that's what keeps me moving, is just to get to know people in their authenticity and encourage that they keep becoming more and more authentic. I am not a judge. I am not here to tell you that you're right or wrong, but I will walk with you. And if you ask me what I see, I will tell you what I see honestly, but also as a person who has got your back and who's on your side.
Thanks for letting us know. I know when it comes to when it comes to
Actually, that was just really funny. Thanks for letting us know that you're okay.
is there a I supposedly have some Cherokee background, but I've seen a picture of my great grandmother and she looked Cherokee. But if I've had my DNA and it's don't come up. I've had people tell me to go in some place called Atmore and they'll check to see if you got it that's native or something. It probably won't come up, but I've seen her picture. I know it's hard to read, so but I mean
Well,
I'm
indigenous North American indigenous DNA, there's not a lot of samples of it because a lot of indigenous people don't want their DNA being picked up by government. I mean, would
by the
you? I
Mormons.
mean, come on. Well, the Mormons about that, but I mean, seriously, given the history, you just
Yeah,
willingly give your DNA to a
exactly.
corporation. I don't blame them.
I don't either. And I know as far as I know Christina, if she got hers read, I know some of it would come up, but mine may be very low. So from my mom's side, I don't think my dad was. So, but I've always had a respect for native teachings. When I went through chemo, I had a dream of a medicine man like spitting water or something on me or whatever, when they do the little healing ceremonies. And I woke up from that like, what in the world? And it was real cool. I mean, that's a good dream to have when you're going through chemo for sure. And
Absolutely.
my dad, who never drank alcohol or anything or did drugs, he's passed now, but he said he saw a ghost of a chief around a house when we lived in Georgia. So there's been things, and I've had lots on, and I think it's the go-to for healing and for paranormal and UFO stuff. It's the go-to on so many levels. It's not as polluted with fear like some of the crazy white stuff with abductions. There's
Thank
fearful
you.
stuff in it, but it's not as toxic, so to speak, because they just go straight to the fear with the white folks and UFOs.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But the star people and all that, and the dances and things like that are kind of a ceremony. I know you should look up Artie Six Killer Clark. It's ARDY Six Killer Clark with an E, and she has a native book and a Sky People book. But I know
Mm.
that native book's kind of hard to get and expensive for some dumb reason. They need to reprint it or something. But she has stories of people in these native situations. Excuse me, that say they're water keepers for some of this UFO stuff. Like the
This
UFOs
one,
come down.
Space Age Indians.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah,
That's the one that's not expensive.
right.
But
Sky people, this is the best one ever.
yeah, that's South America. She
Central
goes.
America,
She goes.
Guatemala,
Okay.
Honduras,
She
Nicaragua.
goes to these tribes and people and gets these stories and
This
puts
is
them
the
in books.
one.
She's got like balls of steel.
Mhm.
That one's like
That
that
was,
one for some reason is like $200
yeah,
now,
this
which I
one's
don't
like out of
understand.
print. That's out of print.
It's
And then,
stupid.
and then, and then this. So I've got all of her stuff because
They're
she's
really good
fabulous.
though. You
She's
would enjoy them.
fabulous. She's fabulous.
There's some story about the water keepers where natives keep like a river or something and the UFOs come down and get water from it and they interact. Like there's a lot of cool
Mhm.
experiences in there that I'd never heard. In South America, stories of blue giants coming from the sky and taking women from villages and crazy stuff. But that's scary. But I know one thing, I've always been interested in coyote and the folklore, coyote and the hairy man hanging out. And I'm not sure which belief systems. I know they're in different ones. But is there a trickster element in yours, that a certain one?
Yeah, absolutely. Coyote is very much a teacher because you don't want to do what Coyote does. So he's that teacher that teaches you don't do this, don't do that. They definitely, there's a very widespread belief system. If a coyote crosses your path, turn around, go home, start over. Yeah. Yeah, trickster energy. But see, I'm not afraid of trickster energy either because they can be teachers too. You just gotta know, you know?
Yeah, there was some chant by DJ Conway to call Coyote, and I did it too much. And sometimes when I get upset, I do it too much. And I think it's been a mistake, maybe.
Well,
It's probably why I'm so messed up.
well,
But
the thing is that coyotes and wolves look very similar. You have to know the difference though. Coyote will want you to think that it is your teacher. And indeed, it does teach you because it teaches you what it looks like to go spin in a circle, those catch 22 thoughts, and all of that. But the wolf is the teacher, and the teacher is the one that you're actually trying to call. So it's interesting. It's fun. I mean, everybody has different experiences, but that one I do know there's a lot of lessons about the coyote, and he basically is like that cartoon character that makes the kids laugh and figure out, don't pop your eyes out of their sockets, this is not a good thing, that kind of a funny type of a thing, how to live within the morals of the code, and don't do what coyote does.
do some natives kind of treat it like the devil, or is that just like a Christian thing? Like, do they whisper it, like, don't say coyote and things like that?
I can't speak for all natives, but I can tell you that my experience is that if you find a very traditional, let me just put it this way. My father was born in 1932, full blood Navajo. When he was a little boy, he was taken from the
Mhm.
boarding school, or taken from his Hogan and put in a boarding school. This is my dad. This is how close I am to this. He absolutely was white man, Christianized thinking. He was a savage because he was so young when all of this happened. So he ended up going the Christian way and all of that. And so my father, I remember one time I was on the res, and my father actually is still alive. He's coming to the end of his, sacred road here on earth, but he is the elder of my clan because he is the eldest. And I remember sitting there with him on the res. It's hot, sun beating down. There was a guy who came back from the war or the army. And my dad said, he talks too much. And I said, what? He talks too much. And I said, oh. He said, he has seen things that these women and children do not need to know. It puts an imbalance in their mind. So, with that idea, there are a lot of traditional Navajos. You'll find a lot of Lakotas, in my opinion, in my exploration, in my observation, that are very willing to talk. You find a lot of Lakota information in books and in all of these things. You don't
Mhm.
find a lot of Navajo because Navajo are like, don't talk too much. Um, if you talk about it, you are calling the spirit of it to come.
Makes it real. Makes it too real.
And it
Confrontation.
hears you, the spirit
Yeah.
comes.
Right.
And that's unfortunate around like the COVID epidemic and all of the pandemic, is because a lot of them, you've got a lot of younger ones like me, although I'm an elder, so I'm not really that young, so maybe like my kid, but that is like the older generation is like, don't speak that name because it will come. But then there comes a point where it's like, but we got to talk about this. We got to educate ourselves around it. So, yeah, there's my dad. When I was a little girl, there were a couple of words that I was very aware of that he was never to utter because of his stance within the spiritual community. Even though it was Christianized, it still was a stance that his voice had power in the community. So if he were to say these words, he would summon it.
Mm-hmm.
And to the extent that I actually have a given name, a spiritual name of my essence, of my soul, and it's not Granddaughter Crow. But if I tell you that name and you were
Right,
to
right,
remember and utter it, you could call me back from the grave. So
right.
there's a lot about, I love Wham. She's just nodding and nodding and nodding.
Well, it just sounds like my, I have a teacher who's a Mohican elder, and it just sounds like stuff she says, So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
be
common.
careful. Be careful what you think. Don't be
What you-
afraid of what you think, but be careful of how much you feed certain thoughts. Don't ignore what you're thinking, but obviously be careful to, it's like that old story about the grandson going up to the grandfather and saying, "Grandfather, I have two wolves within me. One is white and one is dark, and they're fighting against each other. One is good and one is evil." And he goes, "Grandfather, which one's going to win?" And the grandfather says, "Whichever one you feed." So feed what you water the grass that you want to grow. I mean, it's very simple. Water the grass that you want to grow.
Right. Well, and when you speak, I mean, if you decide you need to speak some things, just be careful what you speak.
Yeah,
Speak it carefully. Don't be careless with it. Um,
I agree.
I mean, there are times when you do need to talk about hard stuff.
Yes, I agree.
You
You
know,
know
and
what? And I love that you're bringing that up, Wham, because I was actually in a conversation with a lady today who is like, "I need to be love and light, and I didn't go through my hard spiritual lesson with grace." And I was just like, "Okay, honey, we're human. Just like I set sacred space to create beauty and healing, I do the same thing with my husband. I'm like, sacred space, us bubble. Oh my God, this is what's going on. And blah, 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 blah. And so it's still keeping it in a sacred space that I'm not casting all of this, but it's kind of like that talk. So be yourself in sacred space, but set up that sacred space with intention and work with your words with intention. Feel all your feelings, talk about what you need to, but make sure that you are conscious about what's coming out of your mouth and in what space you're in when it does.
yeah, because I have it. I have it. My moon is in Taurus, and it is the depositor of my chart. And when I say something, really, it happens really fast. I manifest stuff really quickly, and it good or bad, And it took a lot to learn that.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot to learn that.
I know one thing I've seen with the C virus. Uh, I've seen certain. I don't want to get into this too heavily, but right wing personalities at a conspiracy site that I'm employed at who spoke out against the vaccine. And I got the first one. I haven't got the other ones, but I haven't had the boosters. But not going after, whatever your choice is with that, that's fine. Not knocking those people. But I've seen specific personalities on radio shows talk crap about the C and the vaccine, and I've seen them die like months later. And a lot of them are Trump, QAnon, weird stuff, like extremists, and they're dead. And it's like
Well, they
I'm
were
like, is that
actually
hunting them?
terrified of it. That they were terrified of it. That's why they were speaking in the manner that they were. You know, they
Yeah,
weren't speaking a divine truth. They
there was
they were
Thurston
terrified of it.
W, who was I believe Asian, who's friends with Roseanne. She passed away. I've seen Rob Skiba, some flat Earth dude. I still don't understand that flat Earth crap. But
Stuff and
another
actually
guy,
food.
God, Russ Dysdar. Like I've seen it. It's like, and I've set back because I at this particular job, that audience, you have to share that kind of material to make clicks there to get income. And I'm like, I'm running out of people to share here to these people. Like there's nobody left.
I'm not laughing morbidly.
It's
I'm just
yeah,
like,
it's just crazy. But I'm just saying when it comes to things manifesting, that's why I try to be careful. Like the C word, the S Walker word.
Yep.
Try to be careful. But it's just crazy. So I know with obviously with Christianity, there's heroes and things like that. But are who are some of the ones with Navajo? I mean, is there
Mm.
particular heroes that we have names of? Who was
Yeah,
Black Elk? What was he? What tribe was
right.
Black Elk?
I am not sure what
Yeah, I don't
Black
think he was
Elk
Navajo.
was.
Maybe Hopi. I don't know. But is there
Yeah, but
particular heroes?
I don't think that like, just, I guess, again, I speak for myself. I don't make a particular person a hero unless they have overcome a huge obstacle in their own life and healed from it. Then they become my hero, but I don't follow anybody. But I would say that for me, as a Navajo thinker, I would say that my hero changes clothes 4 times a year. In the winter, she wears a white dress. In the spring, her dress is like starting to get flowers on it. And there's some rain. Her hair guns down like rain. In the summer, she's in this bright, beautiful dress. And then in the winter, in the autumn time, she wears like yellow and orange. And her name is Changing Woman, and she is Mother Earth. And that is my hero because she shows me that there will be times in my life that I am in my spring. There will be times in my life where I'm growing. There will be times in my life when I need to let go, just like the leaves of the tree. And there will be times in my life that will feel cold like the winter. And that doesn't mean that when I am cold like the winter, that I am being punished. It means that it is natural. It is natural. What we experience is natural. What we get when we get into our confusion, it's because we are assigning a narrative that doesn't really fit with certain things, or assigning somebody else's narrative or a dogma to stuff, and then we feel this guilt and the shame, and I'm just like, oh honey, please don't do that. Don't do that. You are as natural as hard times feel like the winter, but they're also a time to go within and do some work. Sometimes summertime, you're in the summertime in your career and you're just like all social invitation, creative pursuits, enjoy, let's go have fun, outdoor this, outdoor that. So I would have to say that I wouldn't say savior, I would say hero would be Changing Woman. There's a lot of different ones, but to me, it is the natural world. The natural world does not have an over-processing, overthinking, judgmental mind that causes it to go into a weird spot. The natural world is the natural world. And moreover, to that point, I would say that in my observation, it is the human race is the only organism on the face of this earth that I have found that says things like, I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. I'm not allowed to grow. I need to be limited. The natural world does not have concepts like that. Trees grow. My cat certainly does not apologize for any of her behavior or attitude because she is merely expressing. So it is a human condition when we say, I am not worthy, I am broken, I'm this and that. I've seen a three-legged dog and he's just as happy as anything. He doesn't say, God punished me because I went through this and now I lost my leg. That's all humanized thinking. So when I come across a thought like that within my own life, I bump it up and try to find that same concept within the natural world. And if I can't, then I'm like, I need to re-examine this idea. Why does the human race think like this? Is it to keep us down and to keep us under a dogmatic control system, or what? And then we draw our own conclusions with it.
And I noticed in your book you have it different chapters: awakening, morning, enlightenment, noon, being, evening, becoming, night, beyond a new day. What made you pick the specific times of the day?
Right. I love that question. For any reader that is going to pick up this book, a tip from the author. First thing to do is go to Appendix B in the back. You will find an overall matrix, and it is broken down into those four quadrants of awakening, enlightenment, being, and becoming. And then applied to that is like the daytime and other things, seasons and times in your life, etc. And we won't get into all of that right now, but the reason why I said awakening in the morning is because you can have spiritual, mental, emotional awakenings, and they can feel much like the way that your physical body awakes in the morning time, literally. At noontime, enlightenment comes. Enlightenment, think about it, light, everything is in the light. There's a high consciousness. That's much like the noontime, very little shadow. The sun is overhead. We're in the light. We're growing. Then the beingness in the evening time, the way that we are is like kick up your feet, have a glass of wine, have dinner, take your hat off, put your hair down, get into your jammy pants or whatever. You're just being. And that feels a lot like you spend your evening for the most part. And then the nighttime is becoming when you rest to get refreshed anew. So in doing this, I thought, how better to provide and open the door of curiosity to what does awakening, enlightenment, being, and becoming look like in the physical body, so that we can experience what does it feel like to you to wake up. Some people wake up really fast, and so maybe their spirit does too. Some people are groggy. They need a couple cups of coffee and they need to kind of wait a minute or an hour or 8 hours or whatever to actually fully wake up. And so maybe that's the same pattern with their spiritual awakening. Sometimes people get alarmed and then they wake up because of an alarm. And maybe that's how your spirit wakes up too, is something alarming coming in. But the reason why I put it in the model of a day is to help people to embody the mental, emotional, and spiritual experience, to know that their body actually knows how it feels. And maybe they can catch cues on what this means by taking cues off of their physical experience.
Definitely. And let's see some other tarot. What's the Cancer tarot card for your sign in the tarot deck?
High Priestess.
High Priestess. Okay.
And probably the moon too, because we're ruled by the moon, and there's a little lunar stuff going on with Cancerian energy. But the high priestess is the one who kind of sits between the veils. So we pick up a lot of energy, and we're like, whoa.
Here's something I turn to. Once Loki is free, three roosters will crow. The sound will awaken the giants, and all this from the underworld will rise and gets into Norse. So that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff in here. When I started describing my book to the readers, I just was like, I really, it's just a lot of information being able to interweave. But, when I see it described, it's basically saying, other people, like it was my publisher that said, what your book is about is the journeying to question ideas, to deconstruct concepts, and to heal from harmful belief systems. And I'm like, I wrote about that? That is so cool. I can't wait to read it, right? But at the end of the day, I am in my early 50s. When I was in high school, I barely graduated. I had to pull a D up, an F up to a D in order to get my high school graduation diploma. Didn't know I got it until the night thereof. I had a lot of other things going on in my childhood, and I do talk about, I give some anecdotal explanations of me and my life within the book as well. So maybe you can identify with, what does it feel like when your parents are completely Christianized and then you decide to question and they ask you to leave, those types of things. So when I was 30, I decided to go to college, night school for adults. And I was like scared, but really curious. The first night, my professor said, okay, we're in Gen 101, teaching an adult how to learn again, how to think again, how to take responsibility for their own education. And there was an icebreaker, and they were like, so if you were to write a book, what would the title of it be? And so we all take 5-10 minutes, write it down, and they start going around the room. Well, first guy is all, I teach people how to ski. So obviously, you know that if you like to ski or want to know about skiing, you could have a conversation with him about skiing. And so I was like, well, that's kind of like regular, I guess. Then the next lady said, oh yeah, how to bake oatmeal cookies. And I'm like, uh-oh, I did this assignment wrong. And so they got up to me, and I had a split second to think of something else, like how to make really good lasagna so that I'd be a part of the group, or to be honest. And I said, my book would be called Belief, Being, and Beyond. And she said, to me, I remember an awkward silence of people turning their head and kind of going, "Oh my God, you're the alien that I heard about, and you're weird again." I've always been considered that. I'm used to being cast in that position as a child, and my professor, she was just so brilliant, and she just said, "Explain to us, what are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, whatever you believe constitutes how you behave in the world. Like, if you believe that you need to brush your teeth twice a day or your teeth will fall out, you will religiously brush your teeth." And she was like, wow, that's really empowered. And believe it or not, like 20 years later, I actually wrote that book. So this is a book that is an exploration of, when I was young, I was actually I had the calling, so to speak, calling on my life to carry the cloak or the torch for the Christian faith from my mother and father, who met in missionary school and seminary school. And then when I was about 15, I started questioning that God, and I was seen as possessed.
Yep.
And they asked me to leave right after I graduated from high school. They said, what is it going to take to get you out of this house? They had prayer meetings that they would get the devil out of me. But
Hmm.
all I was doing, I wasn't saying bad words. I wasn't smoking. I didn't even know what alcohol tasted like. I was literally just going, well, if God loves everybody, but you can only go to heaven if you learn this certain belief system, but there are many, many people around the world that will never hear this belief system. How is that a loving God? Oh my goodness. To this day, my parents do not know that I am an author. They do not follow Granddaughter Crow. I have been ostracized. The only conversations that I have with them is them praying for my soul to this day. So
Wow.
when I talk to you about belief, being, and beyond, this book is my soul writing to you about how some people's belief system will be so harmful to other people, and they will ostracize them based on religious beliefs, based on sexual orientation, based on having red hair, being a female, like so many different things. And so this one is like, people, let's not do this anymore. If you have been hurt because you have been considered the AKA other because of your belief system, I mean, we go to war over belief systems. My parents loved me. I was a golden child until I was not, because I did not subscribe to their belief system, and they disowned me. So if a belief system can have a parent disown a child, we need to wake up and take a look at what we're doing. And that's why I wrote this book. So if you've been harmed by somebody's belief system because it was dogmatic, or it didn't stretch out far enough to understand you, please pick up this book. Reach out to me, www.granddaughtercrow.com. I am on your side. I am here for your authenticity. I am here to listen to your experience.
And we appreciate it. And I know, with a lot of people abused and hurt natives in the name of Christianity, in the name of God and Jesus, and that'd be a conundrum for someone native and who's also a believer, and that's got to come up. You would think. I don't see how it couldn't. In my family, my mother, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this on air. We had a great great grandfather. Luckily, I never met him, but I've seen creepy pictures of him. And back in the a long time ago, what, 60s, I don't remember, but he looked like a gangster and had like a plastic spider hanging from his mouth in the picture. But he molested my mom and her sisters, and he was a preacher that was well respected, and no one would believe them, so it never really got out, or if it did, it got squashed. But one of the sisters, my mom's, both her sisters are passed. She's the last remaining one. She had to wear like a kidney bag all her life from this guy. So this, just the fact, these harmful belief systems that people are
Yeah.
behind, and they do this stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, there are serial killers that will. I've heard of a particular one that would read the Bible to you as he's killing you. It's just crazy, and it creates a conundrum. You don't try to blame God and Jesus for it all, but my mom won't set foot in a church. She won't even hardly listen to scripture. She don't like it. And I know when they tried to baptize her, she ran away. And that's probably it's sad because it was probably from this sicko. You
Yeah.
know, that's what happens from these harmful belief systems.
Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I grew up. I was just thinking about this today. I grew up in a very conservative, cultish sort of brand of Lutheranism. Garrison Keillor, Run for the Hills, and I was just thinking about this today. My father used to tell me that he could tell that I was of Satan because he could see spirits moving in and out of my room. And of course, I had sort of a dual reaction to that. One was, of course, to be devastated, but the other was it was like, why can't I see them? You know what I mean? So
Sure.
he had some gifts, but he interpreted them in a certain kind of way.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I remember I completely stymied my mom at a certain point because I said, so love heals all things. Love conquers all things, right? And she was like, yeah. And I said, so why don't we love Satan then? Wouldn't
Oh.
I'm like 4 years old. I said, wouldn't that take care of that? And she just sort of looked at me like I was completely insane.
I love it.
But to me, that's like super logic. I my parents know nothing about what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
And I think I would bet that the majority of the listeners have similar experiences. And so what I would say to you is just because we are voices on the air sharing our story, feel free to go home and journal your story and realize that you're not alone in what this experience is of people trying to pressure different belief systems, and how did you become your own hero, and where are you at now, and where do you want to go next?
Yep.
Definitely. And we got about 5 minutes. It's been great having you on. I've really enjoyed it, and we've raised consciousness. And everyone, check out Granddaughter Crow's book, "Belief, Being, and Beyond: Your Journey to Questioning Ideas, Deconstructing Concepts, and Healing from Harmful Belief Systems." You want to give out your site? What's your website?
Absolutely, absolutely. So just remember the name Granddaughter Crow. I am a grandmother, but remember Granddaughter Crow because I keep myself in the position of learning from my elders and my ancestors in spirit. And so I'm Granddaughter Crow. And if you Google me, you can find me if you want to. If you're digging what I'm throwing down, that's great. I'd love to connect. www.granddaughtercrow.com. I have all of my books and how to order them if you're interested on my website. I do offer one-on-one sessions. You can look at that on my website. Whatever your spirit is curious about. But I think that what I would say most is, my mission is to inspire, to encourage, and to empower you to be your authenticity. And if that aligns with your path and you align with what I'm throwing down, I would be happy to get an email from you and just hear what you have to say, and let's connect.
Thank you so much. It's been a great show, and I've really enjoyed it. And thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was great getting to know you, Wem, and to Jeffrey. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank
All
you.
right. I've been we just got like 4 minutes or so, but next week is Wham can't wait for this one. Secrets of the Wild West. Daniel Duke. Yeah.
But that's your bailiwick. So
William
much.
H. Bonney.
It's like
There's
running
some
away from the Wild West over
there's
here.
some Billy the Kid.
I'm a
I've
New
interviewed
Yorker.
Danny. He's related to Jesse James. And then Wham's going to sit in with Kate Johnson.
Yeah, because I know her
She knows her. So we'll have
personally.
Wham and Jay. And
Personally.
that's from, I believe, Inner Traditions as well. That's going to be a good one. And let's see. I'm scheduling right now for October. So doing my famous Halloween lineup. I got Steven Snyder, a friend of Stephanie's, on weird serial killer stuff. That's all I got so far. But I'm working. I'm going to try to work on Flowers. He's got that weird
Oh,
book
Stephen
about.
Flowers.
Yeah, he's got a new crazy socialism Nazi book. Talking about
No,
how crazy all that crap is. I might do that for
that would be great.
Halloween, and I'm trying to figure out the others, but trying to get some good ones for October. And I saw a good show, The Man Who Fell from Earth. I don't know who the African American dude's name is, but it's based on that old. It's based on a book, but there was a David Bowie movie. But apparently, there's a
Yeah,
show.
yeah, that's the one I saw years ago.
Me too. And there's a show on Showtime that's 10 episodes, and that dude, it's crazy. Like he crashes and it's like a reptilian kind of thing, and then he becomes a human, but he's adjusting, and it gets crazy as hell. But so far, it's pretty deep. It's pretty good. It's not your normal average. It's weird and it's good. So I've been checking that out. That's The Man Who Fell to Earth on Showtime, and that's it, everybody. So I hope everybody has a good weekend, and we'll see you next
Rub
week
on, rub off. See you later.
for the Wild West. Yippee ki yay! Beep. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. Thanks
Good
for
night.
listening.